We appreciate you taking the time to be here, and as we continue to engage openly and transparently on the BESS project. Our panel today includes Mr. Carlos Blackman, the Renewable Energy Officer, Mr. Richard Goddard, Project Engineer, our environmental and social subject matter expert, Ms. Janice Cumberbatch. Where has Janice moved to? She could put up her hand. Oh, I see you. Also in the audience is our COO, Mr. Terrence Strawn, and our officer in charge, Mr. James Brown. We also have Jason Clark, our project officer as well. Thank you for coming out. So I'm just going to set some ground rules for us. One, respect and courtesy. So please allow the presenter to finish without interruption. Questions and comments. When we reach the Q&A section, please raise your hand or approach the mic when invited and introduce yourself before speaking. Time management-wise, to give as many people as possible the chance to speak, we ask that you keep your questions or comments brief and focused. Constructive engagement, we encourage differing views, but let's share them in a respectful and in the spirit of collaboration. Recording and release, please note that this session is being recorded, and by participating, you are consenting that you will be a part of the official recording. If you do not want to have your picture taken, please just show your hands and we will know when we're snapping our shots not to capture you. We hope that this presentation will cover all of your queries. However, we do understand that there may be some questions that we cannot answer right now, and we will have them documented. We have Kisha, we have Norma here who will be documenting questions, and we will prepare a document which will be shared with you at a later date. We also will be monitoring, okay, our YouTube is up, so we're good to go. We also will be monitoring questions and comments from our digital platforms as well. So I think I have spoken a lot already for the evening. I'm going to hand you over to Mr. Carlos Blackman, Renewable Energy Coordinator, who will be our presenter for tonight. Thank you, Carlos.
Good night, everyone. Thank you very much. And thank you all for joining us today for our presentation of the Battery Energy Storage System Project, comprising of individual systems to be installed across selected locations. Firstly, I wish to describe the purpose of this consultation, which is primarily to ensure that all stakeholders are fully informed and, more importantly, to obtain and listen to your feedback, questions, and concerns as a necessary consideration during the stages of development and conceptualization of this initiative. Throughout this process, we stand committed to engaging with our stakeholders transparently and respectfully. Tonight we will walk through the details of the project, discussing potential impacts, sharing proposed mitigation measures, and introducing our stakeholder engagement plan and grievance mechanism. Your input will be directly inform how we move forward responsibly. Battery energy storage systems. Project overview. The Barbados National Energy Company, through support from the Inter-American Development Bank, IDB, is leading the development of 10 megawatts of battery energy storage systems. These systems will support the national grid for additional renewable energy integration, in particular with the focus of facilitating the interconnection of residential and commercial solar systems, as well as the provision of community resilience and wide BESS systems. As commonly known, the battery energy storage systems can store electricity when there is abundant supply. For example, this is during peak solar generation periods, and subsequently releases when there is no solar. Ultimately, this would be during night periods or during periods of significant cloud cover, or during periods of also grid instability. As a function of the BESS systems, they improve grid stability, contribute towards a reduction of power outages, provide backup power to essential services like hospitals and hurricane shelters, while enabling greater renewable energy penetration, as would have been previously mentioned. The Woodbourne Energy Hub. A critical component of this initiative is the BNECL Energy Hub, which will be located at our Woodbourne facility. This facility will monitor the BESS systems, control BESS systems, and photovoltaic installations across the island in real time. This would relate, of course, to those systems under the company's portfolio. This energy hub also would house a research and development center to provide training and enhance local expertise. This would be local technical expertise, while serving as a showroom and knowledge hub for new clean energy technologies. Now we look at the key elements of this initiative. 10 sites nationwide and were highlighted, with initial primary focus on the selected 5 sample sites. Primarily, these would have been Woodbourne 4, which is also located at the BNECL compound in Woodbourne. Woodbourne 105, BNECL Fair Valley, which was previously known as BNTCL, the Queen's College Secondary School, which is our current location, which we're presenting from, and the new geriatric hospital at Waterford. Reviewing the site selection, it must be mentioned that 15 prospective locations were assessed for technical, environmental, and regulatory suitability. Resultingly, the 5 present sample sites, or 5 presented sample sites, were selected as benchmark locations. Regulatory framework. Impacts were assessed against both the National Regulatory Framework and the IDB Environmental and Social Policy Framework, with reference to the presented guidelines. Now we look at the potential impacts relative to this project. Identifying impacts, land use would have been one of the main proposed or identified impacts. With the installation of battery energy storage system, it is known that land would be used as it would be ground mounted. This was deemed to be mainly considered during the construction and operation phases of the project. Mitigation factors towards the use of land would have looked at the fact that primarily, where possible, existing solar sites would be used to house these battery energy storage systems. What this means is that it wouldn't necessarily entail using new lands, but the already existing solar sites. Also earmarked would have been locations of public benefit or community welfare, such as secondary schools or hospitals. Apart from land use, audible noise would have been targeted as another proposed impact. And this would have been from machinery or vehicle noise during primarily the construction phase of the battery energy storage project. Mitigation factors towards the audible noise identified would be in the areas of scheduling related deliveries appropriately to ensure noise suppression where possible. Also, EMI would have been one of the impacts reviewed, and this primarily would be looking at potential interference with nearby communication signals. Of course, this would really take effect during operational stages of the project. As a mitigation factor against EMI, efforts such as ensuring the utilization of equipment that will have EMI and also electromagnetic compatibility or compliance during the operation of the project. Implementation also of recommended setbacks and distances from neighboring systems will also be one of the factors under review. We have traffic, which was also identified as a possible impact. This will mainly be in the form of delivery vehicles during the construction phase. This would have been highlighted as the area of concern. Mitigation factors towards this effect would be through handling of a traffic management plan, which would see deliveries being scheduled at opportune times to avoid any undue disruptions. Air quality would also be identified. This would relate to dust and emissions during operation of machinery and equipment during the construction phase of the project. Mitigation measures towards the management of dust and emissions would be through dust suppression strategies and also use of low emission vehicles. Risk of fire was also identified as one of the potential impacts of this project. Primarily, this would be risk of fire as it relates to the batteries themselves. Mitigation factors towards the risk of fire entailed early fire detection and automation suppression systems, which will be supported by thermal management systems. Physical containment also is one of the factors that will be in place to manage the risk of fire, with appropriate containerization of the battery energy storage system. So, for example, these systems will be housed within containers. Adequate spacing and setback also would serve as a mitigation factor against the risk of fires, with strict adherence to safety standards and guidelines, primarily speaking to the NFPA 855 standard. Additionally, as a necessary factor, rigorous inspection will also be necessary. So this will be rigorous inspection, maintenance, and emergency response protocols would also have to be put in place. Additional factors would include emergency preparedness and response plans, which would also be implemented. Reviewing the soil and groundwater effects, or potential soil and groundwater effects, we have the risk of leaks during installation or actually in the event of any failures of equipment related to the batteries themselves. This was recognized to be mainly taking effect during the construction stage and or the decommissioning stage. As a mitigation factor, we have waste disposal in this case, which will be handled by licensed waste disposal handlers. Visual impacts also stood as one of the factors that will be reviewed. This will relate to the impacts on the landscape as it relates to the aesthetics of having a battery energy storage system roles on any given compound. Mainly during the operation stage, this will be considered. So factors for mitigation will include such as screening and landscaping measures. Also color blending was one possibility to be included, and this will mitigate against the impacts of the visual systems being installed. Also the natural hazards, that would be one of the factors reviewed also. Relatively, this will speak to flooding, primarily, possibly seismic activity. This impact primarily will be seen during the operational stages of the project. As a mitigation factor, initial performance of risk assessments will be necessary during the site selection. As it relates to any natural hazards, of course, this will also entail doing any historic studies on the site area relative to flooding activities also. Consideration will be given to mounted elevations, which would house or upon which the battery energy systems and corresponding components will be mounted. Of course, compliance with building codes, also coupled with emergency preparedness and response plans, which both would have to be implemented. Further impact factors involve the community health and safety. This would be reviewed relative to elements such as dust, noise, and also the risk of accidents. Probability of this was identified during the construction phase and also the operation phase. From this degree, as a mitigation factor, we would see health and safety and environmental protocols being implemented, with additional support via community awareness and feedback mechanisms. Additional inclusion of segregation to act as separation through fencing systems. This would limit the interaction between community and the actual battery energy storage systems. Community being persons in the environments, immediate environments. Occupational health and safety as a potential impact also being reviewed. And this would have primarily been relative to the exposure of dust, noise, vibration, and risk associated with excavation, trenching. Primarily this was being considered during the construction and operation phases of the project. As mitigation factors, we would have on-site mandatory implementation of approved health and safety policies, procedures and safety plans dealing with operational procedures and safety provisions based on the type of machinery being used. Lastly, the possible impacts which, owing to their positive nature, were deemed not to merit aspects of mitigation. This would include economic impacts, which of course would see the generation of employment around the development of this project. Also the support of the national energy goals. Primarily as a primary target, this would see factors such as increased RE penetration, leading towards further energy security on a national level. The environmental and social management plan. As a key document required for the infrastructure of this project, through undertaking of an environmental and social management plan, we aim to prevent environmental harm, protect community health and safety, engage stakeholders, and ensure compliance. As a living management tool, this helps to ensure that the BESS Project 1 operates sustainably, complies with legal and investor requirements, gains and maintains public acceptance through trust via transparency. Lastly, minimizes risks and maximizes benefits. In identification of the stakeholder engagement plan, the stakeholder engagement plan with specific reference to the development of a battery energy storage system outlines how this project will identify, inform, consult, and engage with people and organizations affected by or interested in this project as an essential component of ensuring transparency, building trust, managing risk, and gaining social license to operate. Through the stakeholder engagement plan, we seek to address misinformation, ensure inclusive and transparent communication, identify and address concerns in an early and timely manner, ensure compliance with legal and financial requirements while preventing or resolving conflict through creation of a framework for mutual understanding and benefit. Stakeholder groups would be as presented, namely affected communities, government agencies, utilities or grid operators, civil society, investors, contractors, and or suppliers, and any related vulnerable groups. Moving on to the grievance mechanism. As a critical part of any responsible project, or any aspect of project development, our grievance redress mechanism for this project serves as a formal process that allows individuals, communities, and stakeholders to raise concerns, complaints, or grievances about the project and have them addressed in a timely, fair, and transparent manner. Through the grievance mechanism, we aim to prevent escalation of conflicts, promote transparency and accountability, protect stakeholders' rights, improve project design and operation while meeting legal and funding requirements. The appeal mechanism. The appeal mechanism basically forms an escalation procedure for unresolved issues as it relates to the development of this project. The appeal mechanism will formally allow stakeholders or complainants to challenge or seek further review of a decision or response made under the project's grievance redress mechanism, while acting as a secondary layer of accountability to ensure that complaints are resolved fairly, transparently, and without any form of bias. This is especially if the complaint is unsatisfied with the initial outcome. At this time, we would like to invite any further questions, comments, or feedback. Or feel free to reach out after the meeting through the contact details provided.
Good saying that we don't have any questions. So Curtis was clear and concise. Everybody is fine and good. Is there any questions from the stream? Okay. All right. So we're good. You want to touch on anything, Richard? In the event that you do think of any questions that you need to ask, you can reach us on info at BNECL.com.bb. That is info at BNECL.com.bb.
The slide that I just put up has the code for the loan. So if you Google this, it will take you to the IDB website, which there's additional information, some details with respect to the project, the goals, the information that our cost was spoken about. So BA-L 1068. If you put that in your Google or your search engine, the additional information will come up.
Richard. All right, so if there are no questions, queries, concerns, we would like to bring tonight's consultation to a close. I want to thank all of you for coming out this evening or joining us online. Thank you for that. So on behalf of BNECL, thank you once again for being here and sharing your voice, or sharing your voice later if you're shy. And I just want to wish you a good night and to travel safely. But if you do need to speak to Carlos or Richard or Janice, feel free to do so. Thank you.